In a broken human market, under a dull red sky, many strange beings moved around. Some were tall with glowing eyes. Some were small and had thin blue skin. It was a place where aliens came to trade for food, water, or old tools. Among them, a tall alien mother walked slowly, holding the hand of her small daughter. The mother's skin was pale purple, and her eyes were bright silver. She wore a torn brown cloak, and her steps were tired. The child was small, only up to the mother's waist, with big purple eyes that once were bright. Now they looked empty like a quiet, dead star. Her small hands were cold, and she did not look around. She did not smile. She did not speak. She only walked beside her mother, silent as the wind. The mother looked down at her, tears shining in her eyes, and whispered softly in her alien tongue. My daughter forgot how to smile. No one cared in the busy market. People shouted about prices. Machines hummed. Other aliens haggled over bread and dried meat. But one human man noticed them. He was standing near an old cart, fixing a broken wheel. He was tall, with a rough beard and tired brown eyes. His clothes were old, patched many times, and he smelled of oil and dust. His name was Jacques. Jacques watched the alien mother and her silent child. Something in his heart felt heavy. It reminded him of something he had lost, but he could not remember it fully. It was like a memory hiding behind a locked door. The alien mother went to a fruit seller and showed him a small silver coin, asking for food. The seller shook his head, pointing at the high price. The mother looked down, holding her daughter's hand tighter, and walked away. The child's eyes stayed on the ground, not noticing the colors of the fruits, the shouting sellers, or the noisy crowd. She did not blink at the loud sounds. She did not cry. She did not smile. Jax felt something twist inside him. He wiped his hands on a dirty cloth, took a piece of bread from his cart, and started to follow them quietly. They left the market and walked toward the lower part of the city, where the broken shelters stood in lines. The walls were cracked. The roofs were made of old metal sheets, and smoke came from small fires. It was a place for those who had nothing. The alien mother entered one of the small shelters, helping her daughter step over the broken doorstep. Inside, there were a few other aliens sitting on the floor, holding cups of warm water, their faces tired and scared. Jacques stood outside, watching through a crack in the wall. He saw the mother take out a small cloth and place it on the floor. She tried to feed her daughter a small piece of dry root, but the child did not open her mouth. The mother's hands shook. Her eyes were red from crying. One of the older aliens inside said something to the mother, shaking his head. The mother held her daughter close, rocking her slowly, whispering words that were soft like a song, but the child's eyes stayed empty. Jax felt his throat tighten. He remembered when he used to rock his own child during storms on Earth, singing softly, telling stories about the stars. His child would smile, even in fear. The alien mother's child did not smile. Jacques stepped back, leaning against the wall, closing his eyes. He did not know why, but he felt he could not walk away. He took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and looked around in his cart. He found a small wooden bird, something he carved to pass the lonely nights. The bird was simple, with wide wings and a small beak. It was not beautiful, but it was soft to touch, and it could stand on its tiny legs. Holding the wooden bird in his hand, Jacques walked to the door of the shelter and knocked gently. The aliens inside turned to look at him. Some were afraid, hiding their faces. The mother looked up, surprised, hugging her daughter close. Jacques raised his hands to show he meant no harm. Slowly, he knelt in front of the small girl. She did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on the floor. He placed the wooden bird on the ground in front of her and pushed it gently so it would slide closer to her small feet. The mother shook her head slightly, as if to say, she will not respond. But Jacques stayed silent, watching. The girl's empty eyes moved slightly, looking at the small bird in front of her. Her tiny fingers twitched. For a moment, the world felt quiet. The other alien stopped moving, watching. The small girl slowly bent down, her small hands reaching out, touching the wooden bird. Her fingers closed around it, holding it tightly. She did not smile. She did not speak, but she held it. And for the first time in a long time, she looked up at someone. She looked up at Jacques, and Jacques, with tears in his tired eyes, gave her a small, warm smile. That night, the cold wind moved through the broken streets. Jacques could not sleep in his small cart. He kept seeing the little alien girl's empty eyes in his mind, holding the small wooden bird in her hand. She did not smile, but she looked at him, and that small moment stayed in his heart. He remembered his own daughter's laugh, the way she would run to him when he came back from work, and how her small hands would hold his face, making him feel strong and alive. But she was gone now, lost in the fires of the last human war. Jacques opened his eyes and stared at the dark ceiling of his cart. He felt the cold metal under his back, but inside, there was a warmth telling him he could not leave. The alien child alone. He had to try again. Morning came with a red sun. Jacques walked back to the lower city, carrying a small bag with him. It had some bread, a few dried fruits, and a small cup for water. It was not much, but it was all he could give. He reached the shelter where the alien mother and her child stayed. The door was half broken, and smoke came from a small fire inside. Jacques stood at the door, knocked softly, and waited. Inside, the alien mother looked up, surprised to see the human again. Her silver eyes were tired, and her face looked like she had not slept all night. The child sat near the fire, holding the small wooden bird in her tiny hands, staring at it without blinking. Jacques took a step inside and placed the small bag on the floor near them. The mother looked at it, then at Jacques, shaking her head. "I have no credits to pay you," she whispered. In a soft, shaky voice, Jacques raised his hand. "It's not for payment," he said, his voice calm. "It's for her." The mother looked down at her daughter, who was still silent, her big purple eyes empty as she held the wooden bird close to her chest. Suddenly, another alien in the shelter, an older one with cracked green skin, spoke. "She will not eat," he said in a tired voice. "The healers tried. She has no will to live." The mother closed her eyes, tears falling down her cheeks. She forgot how to smile. She whispered again, her voice breaking. Jacques knelt down in front of the little girl, trying to catch her eyes, but she did not look up. He slowly took a piece of the bread, broke it into a small piece, and placed it near her. "She can remember," Jacques said softly, "but we need to remind her." The mother shook her head. "How?" "She saw too much. She saw her father taken away. She saw fire and screams. She saw death." Her voice cracked, and she covered her mouth, trying not to cry out loud. Jacques took a deep breath, looking at the child. He did not know how to fix broken hearts, but he knew one thing: no one should be alone, especially a child. He took a small wooden whistle from his pocket, something he used to make for children back on Earth. It was simple, but when blown, it made a soft bird-like sound. Jacques held it in front of the child, and with a small smile, he blew it gently. Tweet. Tweet. The sound was soft and sweet, echoing in the small shelter. The other aliens looked up, surprised by the sudden sound in the silent place. The little girl's fingers tightened on the wooden bird. Her empty eyes blinked once, then twice, looking at the whistle. Jacques smiled softly and blew it again. Tweet. Tweet. The child's lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. She lifted her head a little, looking at Jacques's face. The mother placed her hand on her mouth, tears falling again, but this time they were different tears. "She is looking," the mother whispered, hope trembling in her voice. Jacques placed the whistle in the child's small hand, closing her fingers around it gently. Her purple eyes watched him, her small chest rising and falling as if she was trying to breathe deeper. She needs to hear the sounds of life again, Jock said, his voice low but strong. And she needs to know she is safe now. The child lifted the whistle slowly, placing it near her mouth. She did not blow, but she held it, looking at Jock's, then at her mother. Outside the wind blew, carrying the dust of the broken world. But inside that small shelter, a quiet moment of hope was born. The mother sat beside her daughter, wrapping her arms around the small child, who held the whistle in one hand and the wooden bird in the other. For the first time the child leaned against her mother's chest, her eyes closing softly, holding the things that reminded her of small, simple life. Jock stood up quietly, looking at them. His heart felt heavy, but he knew he would return again. This was not the end. He walked to the door, looking back once more. The mother nodded at him, tears still falling, but a soft hope shining in her silver eyes. As Jock stepped outside, he knew one thing. This child was his last hope to fix the empty space in his heart, and he would not give up until she learned how to smile again. Jock did not plan to return the next morning. He thought he would leave, find work, and forget. But as the cold dawn broke over the broken city, he found himself standing outside the shelter again, holding a small cloth bag in his rough hands. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the child's empty gaze, holding the whistle but too afraid to blow it. He saw her mother's tired eyes, silently begging for hope. But today was different. Today, Jock brought a small gift. That was more than just food or toys. It was something human. Something warm. Inside the bag, wrapped in old cloth, was a small music box. It was not much to look at, a rusted tin box with scratches all over it. But when Jock turned the small key on its side, it would play a soft, gentle tune, the kind that made children sleepy and safe, even in the worst storms. He walked into the shelter quietly. The other aliens looked at him with tired, empty eyes, but they did not stop him now. They had seen the way the child's gaze had lifted yesterday. They saw the human's kindness, and in this cruel world, that was rare. The alien mother was sitting in the corner, holding her child close. The girl was awake, her small hand still gripping the wooden bird, and the whistle lay near her feet. Her purple eyes looked up when Jock entered, following him as he knelt in front of her. Jake smiled softly. "I brought something for you," he said. The child blinked but did not move. Gently, Jock placed the small music box on the dusty floor. He looked at the mother, who watched with silent hope, and then turned the key on the box slowly. A soft click. Then, the music began. It was a gentle melody, slow and warm, with small notes that echoed like a lullaby. The sound was not loud, but in the quiet of the shelter, it felt like a warm breeze. The child's eyes widened a little. Her small fingers loosened their tight hold on the wooden bird, and her gaze fell on the music box, watching the small metal wheel inside turn as it played. The melody spoke to something deep inside the child, like a memory hidden under fear and silence. Ding. 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 The child's fingers slowly reached out, touching the edge of the music box. Her purple eyes followed the spinning wheel inside, and for the first time, her lips parted slightly, letting out a small, shaky breath. The mother gasped softly, covering her mouth, tears forming in her silver eyes. The child moved closer to the music box, sitting on her knees, watching it spin and listening to its soft song. She blinked once, twice, as if fighting to remember something. Jock did not speak. He just sat there, watching her, letting the music fill the broken shelter with something it had not held for a long time. Peace. The melody played, and the child lifted the whistle with her small hand, holding it near her lips. She looked at Jock, then at her mother, then back at the music box. And then softly, she blew into the whistle. Tweet. It was a small, shy sound, but it was there. The mother let out a soft sob, her shoulders shaking. The child's lips twitched, Just a small movement, but it was not emptiness. It was something. The music box stopped, the melody fading into the cold air, but the moment remained. The child held the whistle and the bird, looking up at Jacques, her purple eyes no longer empty, but filled with a soft questioning light. Jacques felt his chest tighten. He reached out, gently placing a hand on the child's small head. Feeling her warmth. "You are safe now," he whispered outside. The wind blew through the broken streets, but inside for a small moment, hope grew in the sound of a whistle and a soft old melody. The child did not smile yet, but something in her eyes had changed, and Jacques knew in that moment that he would not leave until she learned how to smile again. The music box was quiet now, but its gentle melody still echoed in the small shelter. The little alien girl sat beside it, holding the whistle in one hand and the wooden bird in the other. Her purple eyes were no longer empty, but they were not fully alive yet. They carried something deeper, a fear hiding behind silence. Jacques sat quietly across from her, leaning against the cold wall. He watched her small fingers touch the music box, turning it slightly, listening to the faint click it made. The alien mother sat near her daughter, eyes tired but filled with hope, as if afraid that even a small sound might break this fragile moment of peace. Outside, the wind howled, carrying dust across the broken streets. Inside, Jacques cleared his throat softly. "Do you remember your father?" he asked gently, his voice barely above a whisper. The little girl's fingers froze on the music box. Her purple eyes slowly lifted to Jacques, then dropped to the floor. Her small hands gripped the wooden bird tighter, and her lips pressed together. The mother closed her eyes, tears forming. "She saw him taken," she whispered, her voice shaking. Jacques felt a heavy pain in his chest. He looked at the child, remembering how he once held his own daughter's hand, how she would hide behind him when she was scared, how she would smile up at him with trust in her eyes. "Tell me what happened." Jacques sobbed softly. The mother opened her eyes, staring at the cold ground, her silver eyes wet. "The soldiers came in the night," she said, her voice like a broken wind. "They said we had to leave our home. We ran so far, but they caught him." She stopped, covering her mouth as a sob escaped. The little girl's eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. Her small shoulders shook as she held the wooden bird against her chest, her fingers white from gripping it so hard. "She saw them take him away," the mother continued, her voice cracking. "She saw the fire, the shouting, the screams." The child's lips parted, and a small broken sound escaped. A sound that was not a word, but a memory of a scream she could not let out before. Jacques moved closer, kneeling in front of the child. He placed a hand on her small shoulder, feeling how cold she was, even in the warm shelter. "You are safe now," Jacques said softly, looking into her purple eyes. "They cannot hurt you here." The girl blinked, tears rolling down her small cheeks. She looked at Jacques, her lips trembling, but no words came out. The mother wiped her tears, looking at Jacques. "She has not spoken since that night," she said, her voice hollow. "She forgot how to speak. She forgot how to smile." Jacques took a deep breath, his hand still on the child's shoulder. "Sometimes memories hurt so much that we lock them away," he said. "But you are not alone anymore." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small round mirror, its edges scratched and old. It was something he carried to remember. His daughter, something she used to play with. Making funny faces in the reflection. Jacques held the mirror in front of the child, letting her see her reflection. The child's eyes widened slightly as she saw herself, her purple eyes, her small face, the tear tracks on her cheeks. "Do you see her?" Jacques asked softly. "She is brave, she is strong." The child stared at her reflection, her small fingers reaching out to touch the cold glass. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Out. The mother watched, covering her mouth again as more tears fell. Jacques smiled softly. "It's okay to be afraid," he whispered. It's okay to remember. The child's reflection blinked, and for a brief moment, her lips curved upward, just a small, soft movement before falling again. But it was there. The mother let out a soft, choked cry of relief, reaching forward to hold her daughter, hugging her tightly. The child did not resist. She closed her eyes, leaning into her mother's embrace, holding the wooden bird and the whistle close to her small chest. Jax placed the mirror down beside the music box and stood up slowly, watching the mother rock her daughter gently. Outside, the wind had quieted, the dust settling on the empty streets. Inside, the small shelter was filled with a quiet hope, a hope that memories, no matter how broken, could be faced and healed. If not alone, the child opened her eyes, looking at Jax one more time before closing them again. Resting in her mother's arms, Jax turned to leave, stepping outside into the cold air. But he smiled softly. He knew she was on the path to remembering how to smile again, and he would be there, every day, until she did. It had been 3 days since the child touched the mirror. She still did not speak. She still did not smile, but something was changing. She now followed Jax with her eyes when he entered the shelter, clutching the wooden bird to her chest and the small whistle tied around her wrist with a string of old cloth. On this day, Jax brought something new. Not food, not tools, but something even more powerful in a world that had forgotten how to hope. Jax entered the shelter carrying a small broken puppet made from cloth, wood, and string. Its face was painted with a crooked smile, and its hands were too big, making it look silly whenever it moved. The alien mother watched him, confused. The other aliens in the shelter paused, their tired eyes curious as they saw Jax kneel in front of the child again. The child's purple eyes widened a little when she saw the puppet, her small hands loosening their grip on the wooden bird. Jax gave the puppet a small wave. "Hello there," he said in a funny, high-pitched voice, making the puppet's big hands move wildly. The child blinked, her eyes following the puppet's silly dance. She pressed her lips together, holding back something inside. Jax made the puppet trip over its own feet, falling to the ground with a soft thump. "Oh no." Jax made the puppet cry in its squeaky voice. "I fell down again." The child's shoulders shook. The mother gasped, covering her mouth. A small sound escaped the child's lips. It was not a word. It was not a full laugh, but it was a tiny, soft huff, a breath that sounded like a cloud of laughter lost in the air. Jax's eyes softened. He made the puppet stand again, wobbling side to side. "I'm okay. I'm okay." The puppet squeaked, waving its big hands in the air before falling again. Thump. This time, the child's lips twitched. Her purple eyes shone with a small light, and her tiny shoulders shook again. "Ha ha ha ha. The small sound escaped her lips. Again. Her first tiny giggle. The mother burst into tears, but she was smiling as she cried, her silver eyes glowing with hope. Jax continued, letting the puppet dance around the dusty floor, making it fall, spin, and wave its arms. Each time, the child's tiny giggle grew a little louder, her eyes following every move. Her laughter was like a tiny bell in the silence of the broken world, soft and shy but real. Finally, the puppet fell dramatically, flinging its arms out and landing with a loud thump. The child's lips parted, and a clear, soft laugh came out. A real laugh, for a moment. It filled the entire shelter. The mother fell to her knees, hugging her daughter tightly, tears falling as she whispered, "My baby, my baby." The child laughed again, holding the puppet, looking at her mother with eyes that were no longer empty. Jax sat back, feeling tears in his own eyes. He covered his mouth, trying not to cry in front of them. He had almost forgotten how beautiful laughter was. The other aliens in the shelter, who had been silent for so long, smiled softly, watching the child as she held the puppet close, her small giggles echoing in the warm air. They had forgotten what laughter sounded like. Now, they remembered. The child looked at Jax, her purple eyes bright, and for the first time she smiled, a small, shy, crooked smile. But it was there. She lifted the puppet in her small hands, making it wave at Jacques. "Thank you," she whispered in a soft, broken voice. The mother let out a cry of joy, hugging her daughter tighter as the child giggled again, tears of happiness mixing with her soft laughter. Jacques closed his eyes, letting the sound of the child's laughter wash over him like warm sunlight in the cold world. He smiled. The girl was learning how to laugh again, and he would be there every day to teach her how to live without fear. Outside, the cold wind moved through the streets, but inside, the world felt warm, filled with the soft, pure sound of a child's laughter. It was still dark when the sound came, a soft, broken hum floating in the cold morning air of the shelter. The little alien girl, once silent and empty, was sitting near the small fire, holding the wooden bird in her lap and the puppet in her small arms. Her purple eyes were half closed, her lips moving softly as she made the small, trembling sound. Her mother, who had fallen asleep beside her, woke up and held her breath, listening. Jax, sleeping in his cart outside, opened his eyes. He felt it. Before he heard it, the sound of hope. He stepped into the shelter quietly, carrying the small, rusted music box in his hand. The other aliens who had lived in silence and fear for so long were sitting up, listening to the child's soft hum. They had forgotten what hope sounded like. The child looked up at Jacques, her small voice stopping for a moment. Her purple eyes met his, and then she looked at the music box in his hand. Jacques smiled softly. "Would you like to hear it again?" he asked. The child nodded once. Jacques knelt down and turned the small key on the music box. It clicked softly, and then the gentle melody began to play. Ding, 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 The notes were soft but clear, filling the cold, broken shelter with warmth. The child closed her eyes, listening to the music. Her small shoulders relaxed, and she took a deep breath. And then, softly, she began to hum along with the melody. Her voice was quiet, a small trembling sound, but it was there, weaving into the gentle music. Her mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her silver cheeks as she watched her daughter hum for the first time in so long. The other aliens in the shelter sat quietly, letting the music and the child's soft hum wash over them like a warm breeze in the cold. The melody ended, but the child's hum continued, filling the silence with hope. Jacques felt tears in his eyes, but he smiled, letting the soft music and the child's voice fill the empty spaces in his heart. The child opened her eyes and looked around at the others. Her small lips moved as she tried to form words, but they were lost in the hum. Jacques placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "Sing if you want to." The child's eyes shone as she looked at her mother, who nodded with tears of joy. The child took a small breath, and then, in a quiet, broken voice, she began to sing. The words were soft in the alien tongue, but they were sweet, rising and falling with the memory of the melody from the music box. Her mother joined her, their voices blending in a soft, sad, and beautiful song. It was a song of their home, of their people, of the stars they once saw together before the soldiers came. It was a song of loss. It was a song of hope. The other aliens began to hum softly, some with closed eyes, letting the song heal the broken parts of them they had hidden away for so long. Even Jacques, who did not know the words, closed his eyes and let the melody wrap around him, remembering his own child's laughter under the stars. As the song ended, the child looked up, her purple eyes filled with tears, but she smiled a real, clear, bright smile that lit up the small shelter. The mother hugged her tightly, their tears mixing as they laughed softly together. Outside, the sun was rising, its light spilling into the broken streets, turning the dust into soft gold. Inside, the shelter was filled with something more powerful than any weapon, more precious than any treasure. Hope. Jake stood up, looking at the child, as she held the puppet and the wooden bird close, her smile never leaving her face. She had found her voice. She had found her hope. And Jacques knew that as long as she could sing, she would never forget how to smile again. The child's song still echoed in the small shelter long after her soft voice had gone quiet. Everyone had felt it, the way her voice reached into their hearts, pulling out the fear and sadness, replacing it with something warm and alive. But Jacques knew there was still one step left. She had spoken. She had laughed. She had sung. Now she needed to learn how to live again. Early the next morning, as dawn painted the sky in soft pink and gold, Jacques returned to the shelter with something. New dot, it was a small round ball made of soft fabric, stitched together from scraps he found in the market. Its colors were mismatched, red, blue, and green patches, but it was bright, alive, and soft to touch. The child was sitting near the fire, humming softly to herself as she held the wooden bird in her lap. Her mother sat beside her, gently braiding her fine hair. A soft smile on her tired face. Jacques knelt down and held out the colorful ball. The child looked at it, blinking, tilting her head with curiosity. "It's called a ball," Jacques said softly, rolling it gently toward her. The ball wobbled across the dusty floor and stopped at her small feet. She looked at her mother, then at Jacques, then slowly bent down to pick it up. Her small hand squeezed the soft ball, testing its feel. She looked back at Jacques, her purple eyes shining with silent questions. Jacques smiled and nodded. "Throw it to me." The child hesitated, then gently tossed the ball dot. It wobbled through the air and landed in Jacques's large hands. He smiled, bouncing it once before rolling it back to her. The other aliens in the shelter watched quietly, their tired eyes softening as they saw the simple game unfold. Again and again, the ball rolled back and forth, each time the child's small hands growing steadier, her movements becoming more confident. Then, for the first time, Jacques tossed the ball a little higher. The child's eyes widened, her small hands reaching up, and she caught it. She looked at Jacques, surprised, her lips parting. Jacques clapped his hand softly. "You did it." The child looked at the ball in her hands, then at her mother, then back at Jacques. Her lips trembled, and then she smiled, a bright, warm, real smile. Not small, not shy, a full, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face, reaching her purple eyes, making them sparkle like stars. The mother gasped, tears filling her silver eyes, her hands covering her mouth as she saw her daughter's smile for the first time since the night they lost everything. Tears fell. But they were not of sadness. They were tears of hope. The child let out a small, clear laugh as she threw the ball back to Jacques, her smile never leaving her face. Her laughter was like music, like sunlight in the cold, like a promise that even in the darkness, hope could be found. The other aliens in the shelter smiled too, some with tears, some with laughter. As they watched the child play, they had forgotten how hope could look. Now, they remembered. Jacques caught the ball, laughing softly, feeling something in his heart heal, a wound he thought would never close. He looked at the child and whispered softly, "You remembered how to smile." The child giggled, hugging the ball to her chest, her purple eyes bright and alive. She ran to her mother, hugging her tightly, their laughter mixing in the warm air of the small shelter. Outside, the sun rose higher, turning the broken streets into rivers of gold. Inside, the world was no longer broken, because a small child had learned how to smile again, and Jacques knew, in that moment, that he had found what he was searching for all along: hope.